Hello friends, this is Cara-Renee with B.Reborn Art and Healing. Happy Friday to you. Yesterday I did a watercolor painting while I was doing some online training, and so I thought I would go ahead and film it. It's the first time I filmed a watercolor video. I'm using a light box to transfer the design onto my watercolor paper. I just picked a sketch off of Pinterest. So this is not my design. I don't take credit for it in any way. I just like to use them to practice. So here I'm going to go ahead and use my pencil to sketch or trace, that design onto my watercolor paper. And I will be fast forwarding through much of this process because the video was almost 3 hours long. So just in the interest of time, I did cut out a lot of it. So there's the finished pencil sketch or trace. And then I'm coming in with my permanent marker and outlining everything. This is a ink and watercolor kind of technique. And so I'll be going around all of my elements on the flowers, all the petals and all the leaves. And then I'll begin the painting process. Today I am using my Rembrandt watercolor paints. I really love them. They're high quality. They're very transparent, and they layer really well. So you can do a glaze and get really, really good results. So I really like them. The only thing I don't like about them is that the palette is really small. So it can be really hard to kind of kick the paint up out of the pans. So you'll watch me as I move through the video, trying a couple different brushes to get that paint to loosen up in the little half pans that are part of this palette. But it's nice because the palette fits in view for the video. My webcam is fairly limited in terms of it doesn't have any zoom feature. So if I do this in the future, I will get a new webcam or new camera and with a zoom feature so that I can do that. So, and get you closer to the image. And here I'm just using a white eraser to erase my pencil lines. And I have two containers for water. One is for my dirty water. One is for clean water. And I always put the dirty on the right and the clean on the left. I'll be using my Princeton Neptune brushes today. I did pick another brush. This is a Princeton synthetic of some kind. Again, just to loosen that paint up in the palette. The color that I'm using right now, or that I'm using throughout the piece for the yellow, is Aureoline. And again, that's Rembrandt paint. And I like the Aureoline because it's extremely transparent. It's very bright and it is not opaque. I do use Cad Yellow Deep when I get to some of the petals, and that is very opaque, but you'll see how I counterbalance that as I move through the process. So I'm just coloring my centers with that Aureoline and then dropping in bits of transparent Quin Red. It's a really transparent kind of burnt sienna color. In the end project, my centers were much darker than I had wanted and didn't have quite the effect that I intended, but I am not a master watercolorist by any means. And so, but I do a lot of this kind of experimentation. So I thought it would be fun to just show you my process. And kind of, I do have a little bit of my own style in terms of what I like my finished piece to look like. So I really like the glimmers of white that are left over in a design because of the way that I wet the area and the way that I drop the paint in. I do leave some sparkles of white, which I really like. I don't know if it's really that pleasing to people looking at it, but it's what I like, and so that's what I do. And I just gave a little bit of that yellow. Again, that's the Aureoline to the center of those other small flowers. And now I'm going to go ahead and start on my leaves. And this was fairly time consuming. So again, I do speed through that process, but I'll show you the full process for a couple of the leaves, and then it will be skipping ahead. I don't like the sap green in my Rembrandt paints, so I went ahead and got my M. Graham sap green, which is my favorite. It is so vibrant, and it just, when it hits the water, it just magically just spreads beautifully. The Aureoline does as well, but the sap green, I just absolutely love it. And it looks much darker here than it really is in real life. The sap green here was pretty heavily charged with paint, but I really liked it. I do come in with Ultramarine. It's Ultramarine Deep, again, in the Rembrandt color, and that's what I'm going to use as my shadow color to kind of get a little bit of dark underneath where the leaves are over, the petals are over the leaves. And I'm just going to move around the whole page again. This did take me some time. The leaves are actually my favorite part, and probably that's because I have pretty good success with them. So I often will do the leaves before I do the main image. And sometimes that bites me in the behind because I'll do all this work on the leaves and then I mess up on the flower and I'm just like, oh, this is trash. So I'm learning to be a little bit more forgiving of myself in terms of watercolor. And I really hope to be able to get some drawing skills under my belt so that I can do my own drawing and create my own designs rather than practice using someone else's. So again, just continuing to move around the page, I drop the sap green into the top of the petal as well as the end. And then I just kind of do what looks pleasing to me in terms of, my perspective and my view. You might have a different view or a different way of thinking about that, and that is just fine. And then I'm going to come in, just take a break from the leaves there for a moment, and I'm going to add some more of that Aureoline to the center of the flowers because it looked really dull. The same thing happened with my sunflower leaf or my sunflower petals, as you'll see here in a little bit. So here I'm just going to finish up those leaves really quick, and then I'm going to move on to those small flowers, and I'm going to do them in purple. And because purple is a complementary color to yellow, so they just really look great together. The color is very vibrant, and it just makes both of the images or both of the colors, whatever you're coloring or painting, it makes both of them really pop off the page. So I really like the combination. So there is a close-up of the leaves. Love it. Love it. And again, I do like those little white glimmers of white. It's not probably terribly realistic, but I'm still learning the technique, so I'm not too concerned about realism at this point. And here I'm making a darker green using my ultramarine blue and the sap green because those very tiny little leaves I'm going to use with this color. And so that was just me swatching that out so you could see what the color actually looks like. Because again, I was not able to get my camera close enough to be able to have you see what it was looking like it was going down. If you like this kind of video and you'd like to see more, I will definitely work on being able to work a little bit closer up to the camera. The trade-off is that my mixing palette there that I'm able to show you what colors I'm using and how I'm mixing those colors, I would lose that because it wouldn't be visible in the close-up shot. So on these little leaves, I went ahead and took my Aureoline and the sap green and mixed those together a little bit just to create a lighter base, kind of a sunny green color, just to kind of give this particular foliage a little bit of a different tone. So that's what I'm doing there. And I realized when I looked at the final project that there is nothing connecting those two sunflowers together, which I thought was really kind of odd. But that was probably the part of the intent of whoever created it, which is just fine. But I found that kind of amusing. And it was like, oh, did I miss something when I traced this out? But no, there was nothing there to connect those flowers. So I suppose I could have gone in with some kind of a dark shade in those white spaces. But I was really just trying to absorb this idea of actually risking doing a full watercolor process on video, because again, I've not done that before. I've done a little bit of watercoloring in my Water Media Wednesday videos, but not a full-on design like this. So again, that's just a close-up. I just love the green and the yellow. That Aureoline is just extremely sunny and light, and it was perfect for this project. I use it also for the sunflower petals, excuse me. I did change my water out because if it gets too muddy, then basically I'm transferring that muddy water back into my paint and into my palette. So I do occasionally change that water. And so for the leaves, I'm going to make my own purple. So I'm using Ultramarine blue and my Qiunacridone rose, which the rose is off camera there. It's to the far right on my palette. And so the benefit of mixing your colors, mixing two primary colors is rather than a pre-made purple like dioxazine violet, which is incredibly vibrant, and I do use it. But I thought for this, I would go ahead and mix the colors, and you'll see a couple of close-ups here in a bit of what those two pigments actually even do on my palette. And then on the petals, you can see the separation of the pigments, the pink from the blue. And I thought that was really beautiful. About halfway through doing the purple flowers, I had taken a break. And so when I came back and I mixed up some more color, I zoomed out, unfortunately, and that's the flash of that purple and pink. Sorry, that didn't stay for very long, but you can see the separation of the pigments on the palette even. But anyway, when I went back to mix my paint again for this purple, I got a little bit of a different tone. I had a little bit more blue in it, as you can see in one of the flowers, which I'll show you a close-up here in a second. And one of my struggles in learning watercolor is to learn to have variations in color, because in nature, things are not all one color. There's a lot of inconsistencies, even in one flower, from, petal to petal or leaf to leaf. So for my first layer on the sunflower petals, I'm using the Aureoline, and I'm doing a couple of petals at a time because this is a very time-consuming process. And then I'm coming in and dropping in some of that cadmium yellow deep. Just because it's a super sunny color, you just want to keep in mind that you don't want to use a really opaque yellow like cad yellow as a final layer, because it is opaque and it will, it just does something to the surface. I'm not a scientist, so I don't really know what it's doing. I just know that I don't really like the look of it. And you'll see a little bit later on in the video, I do accidentally come in over the center of that sunflower with the cad yellow, and I didn't like it at all. So that's just something to kind of file away in your memory. You don't really want to do that. And then the other thing that I brought in, I apologize, I was talking about something else there, is I brought in the transparent Quin Red. And that close-up, I was just showing you that I hold a paper towel in my left hand while I'm painting so that I can dab off my brush. I can dab off extra pigment or extra water. And so what you saw me doing there was just taking my brush and setting it on the paper towel right on the end of the ferrule and letting it kind of absorb some of that, that water so that it wasn't too watery when it went down on the page. So here I'm just finishing up the last two petals here on this big sunflower. And you'll see that I'm using the transparent red, Quin red, to create my darker passages here on the petals, both at the center, as those petals meet the center of the flower, as well as on the sides where the petal is being overlapped by its neighboring petals. So shading is one of my biggest struggles with watercolor. It's a hard thing to learn. So I was really pleased with how this turned out, though. And then some of the petals looked a little bit dull, and so I went ahead and mixed up a little bit more of that Aureoline and watered it down, and then I'm just coming around all of those petals and adding just a little bit of glazing over that just to kind of brighten it up. And I just absolutely love that. You will see some of those white speckles around the circle of that flower go away in some of the final stages. So I'm not recording the painting of the little sunflower, so it's going to skip ahead here in just a few minutes. And then I'll come back and that sunflower will be magically done. I am mixing up, pulling up some Aureoline again and some of the transparent red, and then making my purple combination again. And I want to go back into the center of the flowers and add a little bit more color. So I'm doing a quick water wash here, and then I'm going to drop in the Aureoline paint, which didn't really show up, I think, because I had already done a layer and it's really transparent. And then dropping in some of that transparent Quin red. Maybe it's gold. I don't know what that. It's shortened on my swatch, so that might not be the correct name of that color. But anyways, it's a brown. It's like a burnt sienna kind of color. And then I'm going to drop in that purple mix, which again is the Ultramarine with the Quin rose, and I'm going to drop some of that purple into the center of the flower. Maybe I do that later. I'm not sure. Sorry, the video is going very fast, and I'm trying to give you as much information as I can because I did move through the process fairly quickly. So there I'm mixing up again those colors and applying them to the center of the small sunflower. And then there's the purple. So I must have missed that when I was doing this voiceover. So that's the dropping in the purple into that smaller flower. And this is where I came in with the cad yellow, and that was not my intention. I just completely grabbed the wrong color. And so what it ends up doing is it creates this opaque layer that I didn't like. So I did kind of dab it up to kind of rescue it. And one of my biggest hangups with watercolor is I do tend to overwork things. And I did overwork this in some ways, but not as much as I would have in the past. So I felt quite accomplished by the end result, and because often I don't know when to stop. So here I'm coming in. I felt like it needed a little bit more dark, a little bit more contrast. So I mixed up a little bit more of that transparent red, and I'm coming in again to the base of those petals and then just kind of sketchily putting some of that brown on the leaf in various places, on the petal, excuse me, just to kind of darken up some of that to create a really good contrast. Sunflowers are probably I don't know, I have so many favorite flowers. Roses are, pink roses are my favorite. And I love, love, love hydrangeas. So I paint hydrangeas quite often. And then sunflowers would probably be third in line. My outdoor studio, which unfortunately I don't work in very often, is kind of decorated in sunflowers. So I do really, really love them. They're a very sunny, happy flower, in my opinion. And here I'm just coming in with a little bit more of that Aureoline and just kind of doing the dance back and forth, adding a little bit more dark, coming in with the Aureoline again to add a little bit more of that light sunny color. And it's beautiful. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I would really love your feedback if you would like to leave a comment. I hope that you have an amazing weekend. It's Friday, day, I don't know, 12 or 13 of the 15-day stay home, stay healthy challenge. So I hope that you are well and healthy. We are here in my world. So I hope you have a great weekend, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.